Hi, welcome to another Colors of Prog. Uh, for those of you who are new to this YouTube podcast, I discuss progressive music from the past and current. So today, I'm going to be speaking about adult film soundtracks of the 70s, a Prague connection. So one thing I've noticed in the past few years is the increase of mostly vinyl releases of soundtrack music to European adult films, primarily from the 1970s, but the genre was prolific until and including the mid-1980s. Now, I spoke of Italian film composers before, like Ennio Morricone, Bruno Nicolai, and Nico Fidenco. They scored, amongst those three people, countless films. And many of their music cues were often used without permission, I'm assuming, in, let's say, harder Italian films, if not some American ones. In Nicolai's case, he did compose a score for Tinto Brass's notorious Caligula. That is true. Now, Nico Fidenko also spent much of the mid to late 1970s, writing and composing the scores for many of film director Joe D'Amato's Emmanuel films, some which were released in both soft X and totally hardcore variants. There actually were vinyl releases at the time of these soundtracks, and I've noticed they've been remastered and are out there again. And Fidenko even contributed to Joe D'Amato's infamous Porno Holocaust from 1981. It's a case of if you know, you know. Now, on the peripheral of the Italian adult film soundtrack scene, there was a smaller German one. Uh, but musician composers like Klaus Schulze of Tangerine Dream and Ashrar Temple, um, they were out there. You could hear mellotrons and moogs and all kinds of synthesizers and pianos and such, and the music for these things. Now, Klaus Schulze worked with Lassie Brown, who actually was an Italian born as Alberto Ferro. Brown was considered one of the fathers or originators of the so-called loops, usually 10-minute hardcore movies, mostly shot without sound, that he sold to American entrepreneurs who exhibited them in what became known as peep show booths. So you can blame Lassie Brown. Brown moved to the Netherlands and worked with a variety of French actresses, most using pseudonyms like Brigitte Mayer and Catherine Ringer. Now, there's a little film history here. Working within their feature film format, Brown was responsible for some of the best crossover titles, including Sensations and Body Love. It's that 1977 film that Klaus Schulze contributed music to. Although Schulze's music is unique, combining a jaunty electronic score, he is said to have been not found fond of contributing to the film, although the vinyl soundtrack released at the time of the film is quite good. And it's been remastered and reissued on CD with extra tracks for those that care. Um, now, regardless of what Klaus had said about not being fond, he contributed to the sequel, Body Love 2, also released in 1977. Uh, some people have said, well, serious students of electronic music have said that, well, seems like there are some cues used from the first Body Love soundtrack. Having both in my collection, they seem to be different things. Now, the score may not, may be not what you are expecting from someone with such an experimental music background, but again, it's still not the bad. And it definitely has a bit of that Tangerine Dream sound. Interestingly, La Femme Object, also known as The Womanist Object, released in 1980, is directed by Frederic Lansac, also known as Claude Mulhouse, a French film. It starred popular and prolific French actor Richard Allen as a science fiction writer and inventor who cannot seem to have normal relations with his girlfriend, leading to a downward spiral of alcohol abuse. Those publishers like the idea of a new story where the protagonist builds his own sex robot. So that's what Allen's writer, come scientist, does. He builds Kim, played by French cult adult actress Marilyn Jess. But after playful times, he comes to realize that Kim has her own thoughts and designs. Not only flirts with the author's ex, but builds her own sapphic love robot. Now, the score by Jean-Claude Nashon is quite good. Touches on synthesizer-laden passages with occasionally lustful romantic interludes. Yeah, yeah. In 2023, Pulse Video released via the Melusine website the first ever soundtrack taken from the restored original mono tapes and remixed it. That's now sold out, at least of the original release. And the deluxe vinyl version, there was no CD, I believe, of this released, came with a 14-page Italian language comic book. For some reason, featuring Ciccolina, who was an Italian adult actress who became a politician, true, and a reproduction of the original film poster. Alain Gaulrejeau, another Frenchman, released a vinyl release titled X-Rated Music, also released on vinyl from Impulse and Melusine in, I believe, 2024, 2025. Now, he's a more well-known composer. He's worked with such people as Serge Gainsbourg, and he did the score for the animated film Fantastic Planet, directed by René Laloux. He's always had a fondness for scoring French erotic films of the 70s and 80s. And similar to the release of La Femme Object, Gaurageau's X-rated music comes in a lovely gatefold sleeve. It was on vinyl. Perhaps a little too much revealed in the covers, making notorious item to display in conservative homes and difficult to retail. But the music is just gorgeous. It's definitely electronic, very proggy. It's something I think people should know about. Now, recently, Sexopolis, French erotic retro movie grooves, originally released in 2021 on, I believe, the label Cosmic Disco Machine Records. But it actually was a legit release. It features volume one features nearly 30 music cues over 4 sides of vinyl. There were 2 discs in that release. And it does credit the composers, along with the films that they come from, which is pretty interesting. Now, whether these were sourced from original masters or not, I couldn't say, but I found it very interesting. I'm gonna probably go with original master sourcing because there is no dialogue on these music cues. They run the gamut from well-orchestrated themes with complex time signatures. There's your Prague connection again. Um, but the music is contributed by Lord knows who. I mean, they are credited to a lot of these people, but I'm assuming at the time, if you were in a band, if you were a musician, and you had access to synthesizers and mellotrons, you could just churn out this music, and probably for them, it was a pretty prolific job to do that. You might find a couple of recognizable names in the credits, but more often than not, I just did not know who some of these people were. And the majority are French names. But keep in mind, both the Kinks and the Pretty Things, two popular British bands, were known to provide soundtrack scores themselves. In their cases, they were British softcore sex films and mostly comedies. Kinks did, I believe, Percy, and they did a few others. And the Pretty Things, they did so many. They were stuck in a bad label deal, and while churning out their R&B and their more experimental music later on in their tenure as a band, um, they also did just scores of music that were used in films and mostly British sex comedies at the time. And they were called Electric Banana at some point. True. But that's the band name they used for some of those scores. The Sexopolis, the sequel, that was the volume two, also released on Cosmic Disco Machine Records in 2021, I think. Takes another 30 or so tracks like the previous double vinyl release. In some cases, the music is kind of more ambient. So mood music, yes, you could say that. But remember, these were library cues, chiefly used for French-produced feature-length sex films. Now, going on to Alex Puddu, whose name popped up a lot recently. Um, he's a very prolific musician, composer. Alex Puddu, The Golden Age of Danish Pornography, Volume 1. Sort of. Italian-born but based in Copenhagen, Denmark, Alex Puddu is a multi-instrumentalist and composer infatuated with recreating sounds, music that were never recorded or distributed and never released on vinyl cassette or CD. So he was influenced by films, variety of genres, and so he did not copy the work of those composers. They were never released on vinyl or CD. So what he did was he reimagined the music. Now, volume one of the short series of his appears to be, according to the liner notes, influenced by pioneering Danish smut filmmaker Freddie Weiss, who churned out dozens of 8mm loops in the early 70s. Now, Alex Puddu's disc is the Imagine music set to approximately 8 to 10 of those loops, about an hour worth of music. They were short films intended to play mostly shot without sound over and over in adult bookstore backroom closet-like stalls, famously called peep show booths. The sounds Alex Puddu manages to make out of all this array of keyboards, synthesizers, Moogs, Mellotrons, it feels absolutely right. It's jaunty, clever, full of near progressive rock moments, bouncing between jazz, rock, and other orchestral sounds. Puddu did three of these golden age of Danish pornography recordings before recording some more jazz-leaning music, sometimes with a full band. Of interest, maybe also his 2016 release, In the Eye of the Cat, reimagining scores to Italian thrillers and giallo films, which kind of hit its peak of popularity in the 80s, but were quite popular in the 1970s. He has Alex Puddu, Puddu, as a Bandcamp page where you could sample his music if any of that interests you. So yes, I thought it'd be interesting to talk about this kind of thing. It's very out there. I mean, there's a crossover, people who like genres of film and people who like progressive music, and this is like the dirty cousin. But no, this is very interesting music. And I thought it was worth mentioning. Well, have a great day. I'll be back soon.